Muhammad Hijab says Aisha is just a stalker, but now we have newly leaked texts, and they tell a very different story. The evidence around Muhammad Hijab's secret miscarriage marriage is growing. We now have new evidence that shows Aisha was indeed telling the truth. What does Muhammad Hijab have? A few posts on X and a video with an AI voice telling us half of the story. Then we have Aisha's side, who has told us the story of her and Muhammad Hijab in great detail with Beyond Veils, a YouTube channel that exposes the rotting morals of the Dawa world. Her side is adding up while Hijab's lacks a lot of context and evidence supporting this. Hijab claims the burden of proof is on her to prove it, and prove it she has. If Muhammad Hijab did not marry Aisha, and she's truly a stalker, why is her story so consistent with the evidence that's coming up? What could be the motivation for Muhammad Hijab to not only omit information but to flat out lie? Today my wife is going to analyze this update and offer her take. What is really going on here? Why didn't he just admit this and apologize? Why didn't the Muslim scholars come out and condemn this? Was Aisha telling the truth? Or is this all a way to take down one of the giants of Islamic Dawah? Let's get into it.
If you don't know the background, you need to watch Exposing the Dawah Scene's Underbelly, Hijab's Secret Misyar Wife, to get the full story behind Muhammad Hijab's secret Misyar marriage. Some new texts have surfaced, and I thought it was appropriate to give them some attention and recognition because we have both sides claiming something about the other. Aisha says that she was used and discarded by Muhammad Hijab, while Hijab says that Aisha was simply a stalker and mentally unwell, and the whole thing is a lie. He even swore by Allah that he was telling the truth. Hijab tried to character assassinate Aisha by leaking an audio clip where she talked poorly about his children, saying negative things about him as well. While this isn't something nice or okay to do at all, it still does not take away from what Hijab did. There's an acronym to describe this type of behavior Muhammad Hijab is exhibiting, and it's referred to as DARVO. DARVO stands for Deny, Attack, and Reverse Victim and Offender. We can see that this is one of the many tactics used in order to suppress the validity of Aisha's claims. Hijab denied this, then attacked her character, followed by placing him as the victim of a delusional, mentally unwell stalker. Psychological analysis of Hijab. Why didn't he just apologize? A more valuable approach would have been to admit that he was married to her, instead of completely denying that anything took place at all. But in order for Hijab to see admitting as valuable, that means he would need to be certain of a few things. Put it bluntly, Hijab is showing signs of narcissism. He calls himself a giant. He can't apologize. He thinks he did nothing wrong. Someone like Muhammad Hijab won't confess unless he thinks it won't destroy his image. So instead, he frames this as Aisha's fault, followed by remaining in control of the narrative. This is a characteristic of vindictive narcissism, where his plans to get revenge are messy and childlike, creating a fake account with an AI voice, attempting to paint himself as a victim, making childish tweets on X downplaying the severity of what he did. A grandiose, vindictive narcissist like Muhammad Hijab believes that anyone who challenges him deserves punishment, which we can see in his attempt to publicly humiliate Aisha. For a narcissist like this, they just want to use, discard, and have the problem go away. In our last video, he boasted that nothing would happen to him if Aisha exposed this, but I have a feeling that by not recognizing this was a marriage, that he does see some degree of threat here, which is why he's blaming everything on her in order to avoid accountability. If you think about it, a misyar marriage in itself is a tool Muslims use to avoid public accountability in the sense that while Hijab gets sex, he is also able to avoid any type of real emotional or financial responsibility to Aisha. It's a secret marriage, so he is able to get away with way more than he would in a marriage that was known to the public. The easier thing to do would have been to simply apologize. Apologies, however, require things that he clearly does not have, such as empathy, accountability, and humility. Instead, he would rather gaslight Aisha and rewrite the narrative of what actually happened here. Lying is a complex cognitive process, and there's a spectrum of severity. For example, white lies are a form of lying, such as saying someone looks great when they don't. Lying can become more complex and severe, such as leaving out parts of the truth or key facts, which is omission. Lying can also manifest in the form of minimizing a situation in an effort to avoid blame or reduce consequences. Minimizing in this particular situation has manifested itself in the form of making her the villain and drawing attention to her mistakes. We also see gaslighting in the form of manipulative lying as well. Also, let's face it, hijab is going to feel more emboldened and right in this situation because Islamically, this type of marriage is halal. In general, most people are not good at detecting lies, which is helpful to a proficient liar and narcissist like Mohammed Hijab. Many people might confuse his confidence with credibility, so that makes it easier for the average person to think he's telling the truth. Many Muslims have come out and blamed this entire situation on Israel and calling Aisha a secret agent for Israel. Really out there stuff. Also, let's face it, many people online develop these strange parasocial relationships with public figures like Mohammed Hijab, which would make their cognitive bias even stronger. It's really difficult for people to believe that someone they admire could be deceptive or abusive, just like it was hard for Aisha to see this coming.
Quick pause before we jump to the first text. Subscribe if you're new here and stay tuned for more such videos from the friendly ex-Muslim husband-wife duo.
Let's take a look at some of these texts, followed by offering my theories and analysis. So, I have a few texts here that I want to take a look at. I'm going to go through these one by one and analyze what I think is happening here. So, in this text, we have Aisha pretty much telling the same exact story that she told the channel Behind Veils. There's a number of things here that can be extracted from her audio that match up with the text. Here's what I see aligning with her audio. She talks about the pain she continues to experience. She talks about wasting years of her life on hijab. She mentions again wanting love, kids, a religious companion. She can't be both the man and the woman. She speaks about him not keeping contact with her family. She had ambitions to be part of the dawah work. Aisha's story hasn't changed. Whether in text or her audio interview, her emotional truth stays consistent. Her words may vary slightly. For instance, she says things like, "I had to deal with a lot of pain every time," and "the pain you caused me will never stop growing." She uses different words, but the message is consistent in the same, that Mohammed Hijab deeply hurt her, and she feels as though she's been lied to. In other words, Aisha's emotions match up with the story she's telling. Let's move on to the next text. This one showing something even darker. Threats and psychological control. The nasty threats, mental abuse, and harassment from hijab. The pathetic attempt at covering up. So in this next text exchange, we see manipulation, guilt tripping, and threats to destroy Aisha's reputation being used. Hijab is asking Aisha, "Do you want him to think that you are the kind of woman who wants to have a hotel marriage?" This is simply an attempt to shame Aisha into silence by threatening how others might perceive her. He also says, "I have all of the evidence to the contrary," which is another manipulative method of using vague threats of evidence that may or may not exist. In addition, he says, "What's your next move? What do you want?" This is just a series of controlling questions meant to flip the script here, like shifting the focus from hijab's behavior to Aisha's intentions. This is where the Darvo comes in. He's trying to portray himself as the victim and Aisha as a manipulator or aggressor. Here is another consistency I'm seeing with Aisha's audio in conjunction with her text exchange with hijab. She says that she is losing her mind, while in her audio interview, she states that hijab ruined her mental and physical health. Again, consistency is key. Even when Aisha speaks, her statements are detailed and direct, following a pattern of genuine emotions. Now, hijab is attacking her for seeking help from other Muslims. According to him, she has no right to get help. She has to suffer in silence. Whereas hijab seems unhinged. He's writing all caps saying things like, "Leave me alone. Keep it a secret. Are you dumb?" In the video clip that Mohammed Hijab posted, he paints Aisha as mentally unstable for saying things about his children, hoping he gets cancer. He's using this moment of her being extremely upset and pissed off as the basis for her so-called mental instability. There is a good chance that this was said out of complete anger and frustration for what she experienced. This is a lapse in judgment, in my opinion, and I would like to understand the exact context of why she said this, instead of painting her as an overall cruel, vindictive, or dangerous person. I agree that it is universally unacceptable to talk this way about someone's children, but I don't think this should be used as a way to overshadow Hijab's wrongdoing here. Yet again, another consistency in Aisha's story, guys. She mentioned in her audio that Hijab said he would downplay what happened by saying she couldn't satisfy him in bed. Now, we have an actual text that is corroborating with her audio again. Threatening to speak ill of someone's experiences in bed in public is a gross move, guys. It's also another component of narcissistic manipulation at play. Hijab is having what is basically an affair, religiously sanctioned infidelity, if you will, and now he is saying to Aisha that he will simply tell people she couldn't sexually satisfy him. This type of narcissistic abuse is a common way to twist the narrative here, especially because he's famous and well-known in the community, and so he's weaponizing that Muslims will believe him over her. The silence and lack of condemnation from the community. I think what Mohammed Hijab did was try to unsuccessfully insert lies into the truth of Aisha's story. He thought that by omitting certain texts or only showing certain parts and weaponizing this whole thing, that this would somehow elevate his claim of victimhood. I find it interesting that Mohammed Hijab paints Aisha as someone he met, talked to for years, had interactions with, but somehow she becomes desperate and mentally unstable only when she confronts him about using her. Mohammed Hijab also boasts about being a PhD candidate, but shouldn't a supposedly highly educated man be able to see signs of mental instability? If she was truly mentally unstable, why continue communication with her for so many years? Why lead her on? For me personally, when I can suss out someone mentally unstable or questionable, I pull back a lot. I will start a slow fade with communication, or I might just outright block them. It seems as though Mohammed Hijab had many chances to see red flags, but it's almost as if this narrative about Aisha was made up, something he was able to exploit after some less than ideal things she said. This brings me to another reflection: the silence of the Muslim community, the lack of justice sought for Aisha. This is a learning opportunity for the Muslim elites in the Dawa world, a reason to address these types of marriages in their communities and the harm they impose. The chances of actually addressing this, though, are close to zero. Even when the Wissam Sharif arrest was brought to light, radio silence on the internet from many prominent Muslim figures. The ones that did talk about it, like Yasser Qadi, refused to name him. When Imam Nick brought attention to abuse in masjids, silence and shunning him from the Muslim community. If Muslim elites won't talk about heinous crimes against children, the chances of Aisha's story mattering at all is extremely low. Instead, as the years go on, we will continue to hear more cases like this, but it's going to be non-Muslims and ex-Muslims who talk about it, not the people who are actually living in these communities. The Islamic concept of backbiting is often one of the reasons that there's silence on issues like this, as well as the very real fear of backlash, which may affect a Dawa elite's popularity and income. The Dawa elites rely on Islam to make a living, so speaking out against such injustice is not worth the risk of losing their career, speaking opportunities, and any other perks that come along with being a part of the mega mosque. There's a reason they're known as the Dawa gang. They all stick together and defend each other, even when in the wrong. They would rather protect the image of Islam and the perception of moral integrity at the expense of covering up unethical behavior from one of their own. At the end of the day, this isn't just about one secret marriage, one woman, or one man's ego. It's about a pattern of manipulation, of cover-ups, and of silence. Mohammed Hijab has built his brand on strength, dominance, and religious authority. But what we see here is a man scrambling to protect an image, not an innocent man defending the truth. Aisha's story remains steady, consistent, and painful. Hijab's responses, on the other hand, are fragmented, deflective, and laced with narcissistic tactics. If he truly had nothing to hide, there would be no need for AI-generated videos, vague threats, or a complete denial of what is clearly a long and involved relationship. The more we uncover, the more obvious it becomes. The Dawa world is not prepared to hold its own accountable, but we are, and we will continue to shine a light on these stories, because if the Muslim community won't speak up for women like Aisha, someone has to. This isn't backbiting, this is accountability, and it's long overdue.
Want to help the channel? Subscribe if you haven't and leave a comment and thumbs up. Want to do even more? Join the Patreon. This is Mr. and Mrs. Friendly Ex-Muslim signing out.